The Grand Assembly Hall floated in the darkness between stars, a massive structure built from materials that shimmered like captured starlight. Inside, representatives from 847 different species filled the chamber. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had skin that glowed with inner light. But today, they all shared one purpose. Commander Deho stood alone at the defendant's podium. His gray uniform pressed and clean despite the 3-month journey to reach this place. He was 52 years old, with gray streaks in his black hair and lines around his eyes from years of service to Earth. He had fought in the water wars, negotiated peace between Mars colonies, and represented humanity in first contact with the Vren Collective. Nothing in his career had prepared him for this moment. The High Arbiter, a being named Korvath, rose from the central platform. Korvath's crystalline body refracted light in thousands of directions, making him painful to look at directly. Voice, when he spoke, came through translation devices that every species wore. We gather today to decide the fate of species designation 773, the humans of planet Earth. Korvath's appendages gestured toward the holographic display above the chamber. Earth rotated there, blue and green and beautiful. They have existed in our galaxy for mere thousands of years. Yet, in this short time, they have demonstrated patterns that threaten galactic stability. Deho clenched his fists but said nothing. Protocol demanded silence until directly addressed. The evidence is clear, Korvath continued. In their brief history, humans have engaged in over 15,000 recorded wars. They consume resources at rates that endanger their own planet. They develop weapons before developing wisdom. They expand aggressively into territories without regard for consequences. 3 separate species have filed complaints about human colonial behavior in contested systems. A representative from the Krolix Empire stood, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been discussed. These creatures breed too quickly. They adapt too fast. They refuse to accept their place in the natural order. On their own world, they have driven countless species to extinction. If left unchecked, they will do the same across the galaxy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Deho felt his heart hammering in his chest. He raised his hand, requesting permission to speak. Korvath's crystalline head turned toward him. The human wishes to address the council. The request is denied. You are here to receive judgment, not to argue your case. That time has passed. Then this is not justice, Deho said quietly. This is a predetermined sentence. Justice, Korvath replied, is what protects the majority. The Council has reviewed your species for 20 standard cycles. We have observed your nature. We have calculated the probability of your peaceful integration into galactic society. That probability is 0.03%. Therefore, the Council must act to protect all other species from the threat you represent. The chamber fell silent. Korvath raised his central appendage. The vote is called. All species in favor of enslaving humanity under Council authority indicate now. Lights began to illuminate across the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. Deho watched as the display filled with green. One after another, species voted to strip humanity of its freedom. The Vren Collective, who had traded with Earth for decades. The Talthrin Union, who had signed mutual defense treaties. Pollux. Federation, who had seemed friendly during diplomatic exchanges. All voted yes. When the count finished, 846 green lights glowed in the darkness. Only one species had abstained, its representative sitting silently, with no light showing. The measure passes, Korvath announced. Is hereby declared a ward species under Council protection and control. Earth will be occupied within 1 standard cycle. The human population will be divided among Council species according to need and capability. They will serve as laborers, soldiers, technicians, and servants until such time as they demonstrate capacity for peaceful coexistence. This may take generations. This may take centuries. But it is necessary. Deho felt numb. You're condemning billions of people for crimes they haven't committed. For possibilities, not facts. We are preventing tragedy before it occurs, Korvath said. The decision is final. You have one cycle to prepare your people. Use it wisely. The journey back to Earth took 2 months through council-controlled gateways. Deho spent most of it in his quarters, staring at the walls and trying to find words that could explain what had happened. How could he tell his people that the galaxy had decided they were too dangerous to remain free? How could he explain that democracy, on a galactic scale, had voted to enslave them? When his ship finally emerged near Earth, he saw news feeds already spreading across every network. Somehow, the information had leaked ahead of his return. The planet was in chaos. Protests filled every major city. Some people demanded immediate war against the Council. Others advocated for surrender and cooperation. Most simply cried, knowing that in 1 year everything would change. President Murray met him at the landing facility in Geneva, the capital of the United Earth government. She was 45, brilliant, and had been elected on a platform of peaceful integration with galactic society. Her face looked 10 years older, lined with stress and lack of sleep. "Tell me there's something we missed," she said as they walked toward the secure briefing room. "Tell me there's still a chance to negotiate." "I tried," Deho said. "Wouldn't even let me speak in my defense." The vote was a formality. They'd already decided. In the briefing room, military advisors and scientists waited. General Johann, head of Earth's combined defense forces, stood at the head of the table. His jaw was set in a hard line. "We can fight," Johann said immediately. "We have weapons. We have soldiers. We can make them pay for every meter of Earth they try to take. And then what?" asked Dr. Yunji, the head of Earth's Science Council. "They have 846 species with advanced technology. We've barely mastered faster-than-light travel. This isn't a war we can win through direct conflict. So we just surrender?" Johann's voice rose. "Let them take our people without resistance." Murray raised her hand for silence. "We do neither. We don't surrender. But we don't fight in a way they expect." "Commander Deho, during your time at the Council, what did you learn about their species?" Deho thought carefully. "They're old, ancient, some of them. They've had peace for thousands of years. They've forgotten what real conflict looks like. Their technology is impressive, but it's stagnant. They haven't had to innovate in generations. Because they haven't had to fight," Murray said slowly. "They conquer through overwhelming force, then integrate the conquered species into their system. But humans are different. We've been fighting our entire existence. We adapt. We innovate. We survive." She turned to address the room. "We have 1 year. Use it to prepare, but not in the way they expect. Captain Hunwu, your special forces will begin training civilians in resistance tactics. Dr. Yunji, I want underground research facilities built in secret. We continue surface weapons development as a distraction, but our real work goes deep. General Johann, you'll coordinate the defense that fails publicly while succeeding privately." "I don't understand," Deho said. Murray looked at him with eyes like steel. "We're going to let them enslave us. We're going to let them think they've won. And then, when they've grown comfortable, when they think we're broken, we're going to show them what happens when you chain a species that refuses to stay down." Across Earth, the transformation began. Factories worked day and night, but half their production went to hidden facilities. Scientists shared research openly while conducting secret experiments in bunkers miles underground. Captain Hunwu, a decorated officer with cold eyes and steady hands, visited cities teaching people how to fight without weapons, how to sabotage without being caught, how to survive when everything seemed lost. In Seoul, massive construction projects began. The government claimed they were building new infrastructure, but anyone paying attention would have noticed the excavations went impossibly deep. Similar projects started in Lagos, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities. One night, 3 months before the deadline, Deho found Murray standing alone on the roof of the government building, looking up at the stars. "Do you think this will work?" he asked. "It has to," she said, "because the alternative is watching. Our species disappear into galactic history as nothing more than slaves and servants. They think we're dangerous now? They think we're a threat? They haven't seen anything yet? They'll kill millions," Deho said quietly. "Yes." Murray's voice broke slightly. "They will. And we'll remember every single one. We'll remember and we'll..." Make sure this never happens to anyone else ever again." Above them, stars shone in patterns that now seemed menacing. Somewhere out there, fleets were being assembled. Species were preparing to claim their share of humanity. They were making plans for how to divide Earth's people, how to break their spirit, how to make them useful. What none of them understood, what none of them could understand, was that breaking humanity had never been about applying enough pressure. It had always been about knowing when to stop. And the galaxy was about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. The Council fleets arrived on schedule, filling Earth's orbit with thousands of warships. Ships from the Vren Collective gleamed silver in the sunlight. Krallik's Empire vessels bristled with weapons. Smaller craft from dozens of other species darted between the larger ships, like schools of metallic fish. Commander Deho watched from Geneva as the sky turned dark with their shadows. Earth's defense forces put up a fight, just as they had planned. Missiles launched from surface batteries. Fighter craft engaged the invaders in the upper atmosphere. Orbital platforms fired their weapons until they were destroyed one by one. The humans fought well enough to seem dangerous, but not well enough to actually win. It was a careful balance. The battles lasted 3 weeks. Cities burned under orbital bombardment, but only the ones that had already been evacuated. Military bases exploded spectacularly, but their weapons had been moved months ago. To the Council forces, it looked like humanity was being crushed. To the humans following President Murray's plan, it looked like Stage 1 was complete. When Earth's government finally transmitted the surrender, Korvath himself appeared on every screen across the planet. His crystalline body shimmered with what might have been satisfaction. "People of Earth," he announced, "your resistance has ended. Your military has been defeated. Your weapons have been destroyed. You are now under Council protection. Those who cooperate will be treated fairly. Those who resist will face consequences. Prepare for processing." The processing centers appeared in every major city within days. Massive structures assembled by alien construction machines. They looked like prisons and functioned like sorting facilities. Guy once stood in line at the Soul Center with her family, clutching her younger brother's hand. He was only 16, scared and trying not to show it. Her parents stood close, her mother's eyes red from crying. The line moved slowly forward. Aliens in uniform scanned each human with devices that hummed and blinked. Some people were marked with green lights, others with blue or red. Giwan couldn't tell what the colors meant until families started being separated. "Green markers go to agricultural worlds," someone whispered behind her. "Blue means labor and construction. Red is technical work." When Jiwan's turn came, the scanner passed over her body. She had a degree in mechanical engineering, had worked on Earth's transport systems before the invasion. The device blinked red. "Technical classification," the alien operator said in translated speech. "Vrin collective claim. Departure in 6 hours?" "Wait," Giwan said, reaching for her brother as he was scanned. His marker blinked blue. "We need to stay together." "Family groupings are not priority," the operator said without emotion. "Move along." She watched her brother being led toward a different transport area. Her parents were marked green and sent to a third section. In 5 minutes, her family was torn apart. Around her, similar scenes played out thousands of times. Children crying for parents, husbands separated from wives. The aliens processed humans like cargo, efficient and emotionless. The transport ship to the VN systems was cramped and cold. 300 humans packed into a cargo bay designed for equipment. They were given water, but barely enough food. Some people tried to talk, to form connections, but most sat in shocked silence. Everything they had known was gone. The journey took 2 weeks. When they arrived at the VN shipyard designated Station 47, Quan got her first real look at Council technology from the inside. The station was enormous, a ring of metal 10 kilometers in diameter, orbiting a gas giant. Vren engineers worked on dozens of ships simultaneously, but their methods seemed strangely rigid. The humans were divided into work crews. Jiwan was assigned to maintenance on a military cruiser called the Skypiercer. Her supervisor was a Vren named Kelthax, with 4 arms and skin that shifted between blue and purple depending on his mood. You will repair what breaks, Kelthax explained, his translated voice flat. You will follow procedures exactly. Deviation results in punishment. Questions. What if the procedure is wrong? Juan asked. What if there's a better way? Kelthax's skin flashed red. There is no better way. There is only the way. First offense earns a warning. Remember this. The work was brutal. 12-hour shifts with minimal breaks. The other humans in her crew looked exhausted within days. One man collapsed from hunger and was dragged away. They didn't see him again. The Vryn fed them just enough to work, nothing more. But Ji-Wan noticed things. The Vryn technology was advanced. Yes, but it was old. The procedures they followed had been written centuries ago and never updated. When a power coupling failed, the manual called for complete replacement. A human engineer could have repaired it in minutes with some wire and basic tools. The Vryn insisted on following the manual exactly. They've stopped thinking, she whispered to another human during a rare break. His name was Minho, an older man who had been a systems analyst on Earth. Everything is procedure. Everything is by the book. There's no innovation. Make sense? Minho said quietly. When you conquer everyone else, why bother improving? You're already on top. Guan thought about that as she worked. The Council had dominated the galaxy for so long that they'd grown comfortable. Lazy, even. They had forgotten how to adapt because they'd never needed to. 3 months into her enslavement, Guan discovered the hidden network by accident. She was repairing a communication panel when she noticed a strange signal buried in the routine maintenance logs. Just a few extra characters that didn't belong. She almost reported it as an error, then realized the characters spelled something in Korean. Not alone. Stay strong. Her hands shook as she typed a response into the next log entry. Who are you? The reply came 2 days later. Friend, many of us. Different stations. We are watching. We are learning. Earth remembers. Over the following weeks, Guan made contact with 17 other humans across the station. They used maintenance logs, supply manifests, and work schedules to hide messages. Slowly, carefully, they built a network. She learned that similar networks existed on other stations, other worlds, other ships. One message came from someone named Taijin, who claimed to be on a council research station. Studying their tech, found weaknesses. Will share when ready. Another came from a soldier named Bora, mining colonies organizing. Hundreds of us, waiting for signal. And periodically, buried deep in the station's communication system, Guan found a transmission from Earth itself. Just one word, repeating endlessly, endure. 6 months passed, a full Earth year since the invasion. Guan had learned to repair Vryn systems with her eyes closed. She had memorized the station's layout, knew which guards were lazy and which were vigilant, understood which systems were critical and which were redundant. She had also learned to hide her rage behind a mask of compliance. When Kelthax beat a human worker for being too slow, she kept her face blank. When they cut food rations as punishment for minor infractions, she said nothing. When a young woman was taken away after catching a supervisor's eye and returned hours later crying, Juan held her and whispered comfort, but showed no anger to the Vryn. But she was angry. They all were. The rage burned inside every human on the station, carefully banked like a fire waiting for fuel. They worked their shifts, followed procedures, appeared broken, and they waited. The breakthrough came when Taijin sent detailed schematics through the network. He had been forced to work on Council weapons systems and had discovered something crucial. The Council ships all used the same command protocols, the same authorization codes, the same security systems. Why would they bother with different systems when no one had challenged them in centuries? Guan studied the schematics during her few hours of sleep. The implications were staggering. If they could access one ship's command system, they could potentially access all of them. The Council's greatest strength, their unified systems and standardized technology, is also their greatest vulnerability. She began making small changes during her repair work. Nothing obvious, A communication relay adjusted to receive broader frequencies. A security subroutine modified to accept an additional code. Backup power systems rerouted to support unexpected loads. Each change was tiny, easily explained as routine maintenance if discovered. But together, they formed something larger. Other humans across the network did the same on their stations and ships. Bora organized her mining colony workers into tight units, training them in combat using tools and equipment. Taijin continued mapping Council technology, finding more weaknesses, more vulnerabilities, and still, the message from Earth repeated, endure. One night, after an especially brutal shift where 2 humans had been beaten unconscious for working too slowly, Giwan sat in the sleeping area with Minho and others from her crew. How much longer? Someone whispered, "How much longer do we just take this?" "As long as it takes," Guan said quietly. "They think we're broken. They think we're slaves. Let them think that. Every day they underestimate us is a day we grow stronger." "Want to fight," another human said, a young man whose sister had been sent to a different world. "I want to hurt them like they've hurt us," Juan promised. "But we fight smart, not angry. We fight when we can win." The signal reached Earth first, where Captain Hunoi had waited 3 years for this moment. He stood in a command center 5 kilometers below what used to be Seoul, surrounded by screens showing Council garrison forces spread across the planet. The aliens thought Earth was pacified, its population scattered, its resistance broken. They were wrong on every count. "All units report ready," said Lieutenant Jury at the tactical station. She was 24, had been 21 when the invasion started. She had spent 3 years learning to hate efficiently. Underground networks are synchronized. Surface assets are in position. Weapon platforms are powered and targeted. Hyunwoo looked at the main display. The Council had left only a small garrison fleet in Earth's orbit, maybe 200 ships. Why would they need more? Earth was defeated, its people enslaved across the galaxy. The planet itself served as a supply depot and administrative center. The Council officers here lived comfortably, believing themselves safe. "Execute Operation Sunrise," Hyunwoo ordered. Across Earth, massive railgun installations rose from concealed silos. For 3 years, humans had built them in secret, using Council supply shipments to steal materials one piece at a time. The aliens never noticed because they had never bothered to count their inventory carefully. Why would they? Earth was conquered territory, not a threat. The railguns fired simultaneously. Tungsten rods accelerated to orbital velocity, tearing through Council ships before they could raise shields. In the first 30 seconds, 40% of the garrison fleet simply ceased to exist. The remaining ships tried to respond, but the underground command centers had already hacked their targeting systems. Missiles launched from Council ships locked onto their own vessels. Hyunwoo watched the orbit clear with cold satisfaction. Launch the fleet. From hidden hangars built inside mountains and beneath ice caps, Earth's new ships emerged. They were ugly things, built from stolen technology and human innovation, designed for function over form. But they worked. 300 vessels rose to meet what remained of the garrison fleet. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, Earth's orbit was clear of Council forces for the first time in 3 years. Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile before opening the channel to President Murray, who had spent 3 years hiding in the deep bunkers. "The planet is ours again," he reported. "Now we go get our people back." At the same moment on Station 47, Jiwan moved. She had spent 6 months planning this down to the second. The night shift had fewer Vren supervisors. The security systems rotated their monitoring patterns every 40 minutes. In the gap between rotations, there was a window of exactly 90 seconds. She and Minho approached the main security station from different directions. The Vren guard there was named Porthix, and he had developed a habit of watching entertainment feeds during the quiet hours. He died without knowing humans were in the room. Giwan's fingers flew across the console. Entering the codes Taijin had provided, the station's security systems accepted her commands without question. Why wouldn't they? The protocols were correct. The authorization codes were valid. The idea that slaves could hack council systems was literally unthinkable to the aliens. "Lockdown on all Vren quarters," she whispered. "Life support maintained, but doors sealed. Weapon systems offline. Communications jammed. We have 30 minutes before backup protocols engage." Throughout the station, other humans moved into action. Work crews that had spent 3 years repairing council technology now used that knowledge to take it apart. Power distribution was rerouted. Docking clamps were released on ships that were being serviced. And in the barracks where the Vren guards slept, doors sealed shut with industrial-grade locks. The few Vren who were caught outside their quarters fought back, but they were unprepared. They had weapons, but humans had improvised ones, and the rage of 3 years of slavery. It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't meant to be. Station 47 fell in 40 minutes. Jiwan stood in the command center, watching status displays turn from Vren blue to human green. 3,000 enslaved humans had just taken control of one of the Council's major shipyards. Around the station, dozens of partially repaired warships sat in their berths, and now they belonged to Earth. "Send the signal," she told Minho. "Tell everyone it worked. Tell them to move now." The signal propagated through the hidden networks. On mining colonies across the Krolix Empire, humans rose up. They fought with mining equipment, with bare hands, with fury that 3 years of brutal labor had forged into weapons. The Krolix were stronger individually, but humans fought in coordinated groups. Using tactics learned from military personnel mixed among the civilian workers, Bora led the uprising on Mining Station 12. A facility carved into an asteroid where humans had spent 3 years extracting rare minerals. She had been a police officer on Earth, had become something else entirely during her enslavement. Now she moved through the station's tunnels with 20 other humans. Using the mining charges they had stockpiled, the explosions sealed the Krolix guards in their section. Without communications or reinforcements, they surrendered within hours. By the time the sun rose on the asteroid's tidally locked face, humans controlled the facility and had turned its cargo ships into makeshift warships. On the research station where Taijin had spent 3 years studying Council technology, the uprising was quieter, but no less effective. He had been forced to work on weapons development, had learned more about Council military systems than any human before him. Now he used that knowledge. "Their command network runs through predictable nodes," he explained to the other humans as they worked. "If we shut down these 3 stations, we blind their entire fleet in this sector. They'll be flying on manual navigation and visual targeting." They shut down the nodes. Across 6 solar systems, Council military vessels suddenly lost their tactical networks. Captains who had relied on automated systems for centuries found themselves unable to coordinate their forces. It was like blinding someone who had never experienced darkness. The uprisings weren't all successful. On some worlds, the Council forces reacted too quickly. Humans died by the hundreds, by the thousands. But even in failure, they accomplished something crucial. They proved that humanity wasn't broken. They proved that slaves could fight back. And they terrified the Council in a way nothing else had in millennia. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Korvath received reports of 37 different uprisings in a single day. His crystalline body flickered between colors as he tried to process the impossible. Humans were slaves. Slaves didn't organize. Slaves didn't hack military systems. Slaves didn't capture stations and ships and colonies. "Is this possible?" he demanded of his advisors. "We've had them under control for 3 years. Their planet is occupied. Their military was destroyed. The reports suggest," one advisor said carefully, "that they were never actually under control. They appear to have been preparing this for the entire time." "Preparing?" Korvath's voice rose to frequencies that hurt to hear. They were slaves. They were scattered across hundreds of worlds. They had no communication, no weapons, no organization. "Apparently," the advisor said, "we were wrong about all of those things." Council mobilized its fleets, but the response was chaotic. Species that had worked together for centuries suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate. Their shared systems had been compromised. Their communication networks were unreliable. humans who had spent 3 years maintaining. Council technology knew exactly which parts to sabotage for maximum disruption. On Earth, Hyunwoo launched the second phase. His ships jumped to systems where humans were enslaved, using the same jump gates the Council had installed. The aliens never thought to secure them against humans because humans weren't supposed to be a threat. At Station 47, Giwon began repairing and refitting the captured ships. She worked with other engineers, combining Council technology with human innovation. The results were strange hybrids, vessels that Council designers would have thought impossible. But they flew and they fought. The Battle of Proxima Station happened 6 weeks after the initial uprisings. The Council had assembled a fleet of 300 ships to retake Station 47 and crush the human rebellion there. They were met by a patchwork force of captured Council vessels, refitted human ships, and improvised weapons platforms. Admiral Soo-yoon commanded the defense. She had been a transport pilot before the invasion, had learned military tactics during the 3 years of occupation, and had spent the last 6 weeks studying every naval battle in human and Council history. She was 39 years old and absolutely fearless. "They'll come in tight formation," she told her captains. "They always do. It's doctrine. It's efficient. It's predictable." The Council fleet came in tight formation. Soo-yoon's forces scattered, using human fighter tactics adapted to capital ships. They hit and ran, targeted weak points Taijin had identified, used the station itself as a weapon. The Council fleet tried to adapt but couldn't. The procedures didn't allow for this kind of warfare. When it was over, 2/3 of the Council fleet was destroyed or captured. The remainder fled in disorder. Soo-yoon stood on the bridge of her flagship, captured Vren Dreadnought, renamed Defiance, and opened a wideband transmission to the galaxy. The Vren Collective was the first to break. 3 months after the uprisings began, their ambassador requested a meeting with Earth's representatives. They chose a neutral station at the edge of Council space, a facility that had once processed trade agreements and now stood mostly empty. President Murray arrived with Commander Daeho and Admiral Soo-yoon. They wore simple uniforms with no decorations, nothing to suggest either victory or defeat. The Vrin ambassador, whose name translated to something like Honored Speaker of Unity, waited in the conference room with his security detail. The Vrin looked different than they had 3 years ago. His skin kept shifting between anxious purple and submissive blue. His forearms trembled slightly. When Murray entered, he actually lowered his head in what might have been respect or fear or both. "President Murray," he said through his translator, "thank you for agreeing to meet." "I didn't agree to anything," Murray replied, sitting across from him. "I came to listen. You have 10 minutes to explain why I shouldn't order our fleet to reduce your shipyards to scrap metal." The ambassador's skin flashed pale yellow. "We wish to negotiate peace terms. The Vren Collective acknowledges that mistakes were made. We are prepared to make reparations." "Mistakes," Murray repeated softly. "Is that what you call enslaving billions of people? Working them to death? Separating families?" The Council's decision was made collectively. The Vren were only one voice among many. Daeho leaned forward. "You were one of the first to vote yes. I was there. I watched you cast your vote without hesitation." The ambassador had no response to that. His skin shifted through several colors before settling on a defeated gray. Murray pulled out a data tablet and slid it across the table. "This is a list of every crime your species committed against mine over the past 3 years. Every death you're responsible for. Every family you separated. Every person who died in your facilities. The list is 30,000 pages long, and that's just what we've documented so far." The Vren ambassador looked at the tablet as if it might explode. "What do you want from us?" "Unconditional surrender," Murray said flatly. "Return of every human in your territory with full documentation of where you sent them. Complete access to your systems so we can locate others. Reparations in the form of technology, resources, and labor. And one more thing. Yes. You will stand trial. Your government, your military leadership, everyone who participated in our enslavement. They will face justice for what they did." The ambassador's skin went white. "That would mean the collapse of our civilization. Our entire government would be removed," as Murray said. It would, but you're fortunate. We're giving you a choice. You can surrender and face justice, or you can refuse and face extinction. Those are your only options. The ambassador sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, his skin settled on a deep blue of submission. The collective will accept your terms. We will transmit the surrender within 1 standard day. Good, Murray said, standing. You have 6 hours, not 1 day. After that, we assume you've chosen extinction. They left the ambassador sitting at the table, his skin flickering through colors of panic. On the shuttle back to Earth's fleet, Suyun spoke first. You think he'll actually do it? He doesn't have a choice, Murray replied. The Vren economy is collapsing. Their shipyards are either captured or blockaded. They can't feed their population without the trade networks we've disrupted. Surrender is their only option. And if they refuse? Deho asked. Murray's expression was cold. Then we show them what happens when you make humanity choose between mercy and survival. We've already chosen once. We won't hesitate to do it again. The Vrens surrendered in 5 hours. Their government transmitted unconditional acceptance of Earth's terms, along with databases containing the locations of every human in their territory. Within days, human ships began arriving at Vren facilities to retrieve their people. Gigwan was on station. 47 when she learned her family's location. Her brother was on a Vren mining colony in the outer systems. Her parents were at an agricultural facility 2 sectors away. All 3 were alive. She sat in the command center and cried for the first time in 3 years. Other species watched the Vren collapse and made their own calculations. The Talthran Union sent a delegation offering peace. The Polix Federation requested negotiations. Smaller species rushed to distance themselves from the Council's actions, claiming they had been pressured into voting for enslavement. But not everyone surrendered. The Krolix Empire refused all contact. Their supreme commander, a warrior named Rethkax, the Eternal, broadcast a message to the galaxy from his throne world. The Krolix do not bow to prey species, he declared, his reptilian features twisted in rage. Humanity rose through treachery and deception, not strength. They will be crushed. The Council made one mistake. They tried to use humans as slaves. We will not make that error. We will eliminate them entirely. The Krolix assembled a coalition of species that still believed in Council's superiority. Together, they gathered a fleet of over 2,000 warships, the largest military force assembled in galactic history. Their target was Earth itself. If they could destroy humanity's homeworld, the rebellion would collapse. Captain Hinwu received the intelligence report in his command bunker. He studied the fleet composition, the planned approach vectors, the timeline. They would arrive in 4 weeks. We can't stop that many ships, Lieutenant Jury said quietly. Even with everything we've built, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. We don't need to stop them, Hyunwoo replied. We need to make them wish they'd never come. He transmitted orders across Earth's defensive network. Every weapon platform, every hidden battery, every ship in the fleet received their instructions. Then he sent a second message to human forces across the galaxy. It was time to bring everyone home. While the Krolix coalition gathered, humanity consolidated. Ships carrying freed slaves returned to Earth. Captured Council vessels were repaired and refitted. The scattered human forces that had been fighting across hundreds of systems began converging on their home world. Taijin worked non-stop in the orbital shipyards, modifying weapons and defensive systems. He had spent 3 years learning Council technology, and now he used that knowledge to create something new. Hybrid weapons that combined human and alien concepts. Defense grids that used quantum entanglement for instant coordination. Automated systems that could adapt to changing battlefield conditions. The Council's technology is advanced, he explained to the engineering teams, but it's rigid. Their ships are designed to fight other Council ships using Council tactics. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. On the mining colonies she had liberated, Bora organized ground defense forces. Hundreds of thousands of humans who had spent years in brutal labor now trained for a different kind of work. They dug tunnels, set up ambush positions, and prepared for the possibility that the Krolix fleet might actually make it to Earth's surface. If they land, she told her soldiers. We make them regret it. Every street, every building, every tunnel. We fought with mining tools in the colonies. Here we have real weapons. Here we have home field advantage. For weeks passed quickly. The Krolix Coalition fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system in a formation that stretched for millions of kilometers. Rethkax the Eternal transmitted one final message. Humans of Earth, he said, you have fought well for prey. But this ends now. Surrender, and we will grant quick deaths. Resist, and we will ensure your species suffers for generations before extinction. You have 1 hour to decide. President Murray sat in the rebuilt government building in Geneva, surrounded by her advisors. Outside, the sky was clear and blue. Somewhere above that blue, thousands of alien warships waited to destroy everything humanity had built. You could evacuate, someone suggested. Get as many people as possible to the ships, scatter across the galaxy. Omira said, we ran once. We survived by hiding and enduring. That's done. They wanted to come to Earth. Let them come. Let them see what happens when you threaten humanity in our own home.
Ow.
She opened a channel to Rethkax. Supreme Commander, you've made a mistake. You think you're coming to destroy a broken species? You're wrong. You're coming to die on a world that has already killed everyone who tried to conquer it. Your fleet will burn in our sky. Your warriors will feed our soil. And when we're done, we'll go to your throne world and make sure you never threaten anyone again. Rethkax roared with laughter. Bold words from prey. Let us see if your weapons match your speech. Fleet, advance. Show these primitives the power of the Krolix Empire. The Coalition fleet moved forward. They came in a wedge formation, their most powerful ships at the front. Building momentum as they approached Earth, they expected resistance. They expected humanity's ships to meet them in traditional formation. What they got was chaos. Admiral Wynne had divided Earth's fleet into dozens of small groups. They didn't meet the Krolix head-on. Instead, they harassed the flanks, used asteroids for cover, deployed weapons that violated every council doctrine about honorable warfare. Human ships would fire, retreat, relocate, and fire again from a different angle. The Grand Assembly Hall looked different now. The same crystalline structure still floated between stars, but half the seats sat empty. Some species had withdrawn from the council entirely. Others had collapsed into civil war. The unified galactic government that had existed for millennia was fracturing under the weight of its own failures. President. Murray walked through the chamber where, 4 years ago, Commander Deho had stood helpless while 846 species voted to enslave humanity. Now those same species waited nervously for her to speak, some with hope, some with fear, all with the knowledge that humanity held their future in its hands. Korvath, the High Arbiter, no longer held his position. He had been removed by his own people after the Battle of Earth. The new Arbiter was a younger crystalline being named Vorthus, whose colors shifted anxiously as Myray approached the podium. 4 years ago, Myray began, her voice echoing through the chamber. I stood on Earth and watched this council destroy everything my species had built. You divided our families. You enslaved our people. You worked thousands of us to death. You did all of this because you were afraid of what we might become. The chamber remained silent. No one dared interrupt. You were right to be afraid, Murray continued. Not because we're violent or aggressive or any of the things you claimed. You were right to be afraid because we don't accept the way things are. We don't believe that might makes right. We don't think that old species deserve to rule over young ones. And most importantly, we don't forget those who hurt us. She paused, letting the words sink in. 4 years ago, you had a choice. You could have welcomed us as equals. Instead, you chose enslavement. Now the choice is ours. We can do to you what you did to us. We have the weapons. We have the ships. We have the advantage. The Vren delegation sat with their skin pale gray in fear. The remaining Krolix representatives kept their heads down. Smaller species whispered among themselves, calculating their chances if humanity decided on revenge. "But here's what you never understood about us," Myray said. "Humans fight when we must. We adapt to survive. We endure impossible situations and come out stronger. But we also choose mercy when we can. Not because we're weak, not because we forgive, but because we know what it's like to live under someone else's boot, and we refuse to become you." She gestured to the empty seats. "The Council, as you knew it, is dead. 846 species voted to enslave us. That council no longer exists. What we build now must be different. It must be better, and it will be built on terms that every species agrees to, not imposed by the powerful on the weak." Vorthis spoke carefully. "What terms does Earth propose?" Myray pulled out a document and transmitted it to every representative. "First, slavery is abolished in all its forms. Any species that practices it will be expelled and sanctioned. Second, all enslaved humans must be returned within 6 months. Full documentation of where they were sent and what happened to them. Third, war crimes tribunals will be established to prosecute those responsible for atrocities." The chamber erupted in argument. Some species protested. Others demanded clarification. One representative stood and shouted that humanity had no right to dictate terms to the galaxy. Myra waited for the noise to die down. "We're not dictating. We're offering a choice. You can join the new council under these terms, or you can refuse and face the consequences. But understand this: Earth will have veto power over council decisions for the next century. We will not allow this body to threaten anyone the way it threatened us." "It's not equality," a Pollux delegate argued. "That's Earth dominance." "Yes," Myray agreed flatly. "It is. You had centuries to build a fair system. You chose conquest and subjugation instead. Now you deal with the results. In 100 years, if you've proven you can govern without enslaving others, we'll relinquish the veto. Until then, we hold it as insurance against your worst impulses." The arguing continued for hours, but eventually reality settled in. Humanity had won the war. They held the military advantage. They had the moral high ground. The council species could accept the new terms or face extinction. One by one, species voted to accept. Not all of them. Some refused and withdrew from the council entirely. But enough agreed to form a foundation. 6 months after the vote, Giwan stood at a landing facility in what was left of Sol. Transport ships descended from orbit carrying the last group of returned humans from the Vren territories. She had already been reunited with her family, but she came to watch others find theirs. Her brother walked beside her, limping slightly from an injury that had never healed properly. He was 19 now, but looked 30. His eyes had seen things no teenager should see. Her parents waited at home, struggling to adjust to a world that had moved on without them. "Do you think it was worth it?" her brother asked quietly, watching families reunite with tears and shouting. "All the people we lost, all the pain. Was winning worth that cost?" Giwan thought about the 3 years she had spent on Station 47. The hunger, the beatings, the friends who had died. Then she thought about the moment they took control, the moment slaves became free. "We didn't fight to win," she said. "We fought because we had no choice. They made us choose between slavery and resistance. Anyone who chose slavery is still alive but not free. Anyone who chose resistance might be dead, but they died free. Yes, it was worth it." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Humans returned from mining colonies, agricultural worlds, research stations, and warships. Some came back whole. Many came back broken. All came back changed. Bora organized support networks for returned soldiers. Many struggled with what they had done and seen. She understood. She woke up most nights remembering the Krolix warriors she had killed, the council guards she had watched die. The nightmares would probably never stop. But at least now, she had others who understood. Taijin became Earth's chief technology advisor. He spent his days helping humanity integrate council technology with their own innovations. But he also made sure to teach younger engineers about the dangers of technological stagnation. The council had been so advanced, they stopped advancing. And that complacency had destroyed them. Admiral Suyun commanded Earth's new defense fleet. She insisted on keeping captured Council ships in service alongside human vessels. When asked why, she explained that every ship represented a reminder of what happened when species grew. Complacent and cruel, Captain Hunwoo retired from active service. After the Battle of Earth, he spent his remaining years teaching at a military academy, making sure that future generations understood not just how to fight, but why they had fought. The lessons from enslavement needed to be remembered, or humanity might repeat the same mistakes. The War Crimes Tribunals began 1 year after Earth's victory. Commander Daeho served as a prosecutor. He stood in courtrooms across Council space and detailed crimes that made even hardened soldiers weep. Some defendants claimed they were following orders. Others said they were just doing their jobs. None of those excuses saved them from justice. Korvath, the former High Arbiter, was tried for crimes against humanity. He stood in a courtroom on Earth, surrounded by humans he had once dismissed as prey. When asked if he had anything to say in his defense, his crystalline body flickered through colors of confusion. "I don't understand," he said through his translator. "We followed standard council procedure. We acted according to law. We did what the galaxy had done for millennia." Daeho looked at him with cold eyes. "That's exactly the problem. Your law was wrong. Your procedures were wrong. Your entire civilization was built on the idea that might makes right. We're here to show you that might can be defeated, that slaves can become conquerors, that your ancient systems are not inevitable or eternal." Korvath was sentenced to life imprisonment on Earth, where he would spend his remaining centuries watching humanity build something better than the Council had ever managed. 5 years after the invasion, a monument was unveiled at the site where the processing centers had stood in Seoul. It showed a human figure in chains, captured mid-motion as the chains shattered. Around the base, inscribed in 847 languages, were the words, "They thought weakness was compassion. They thought chains could hold us. They learned that humanity's mercy is not weakness, it is a choice. Do not make us choose again." President Murray attended the dedication ceremony. She was 50 now, with more gray in her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. The cost of 5 years of war showed on her face. But she stood straight, her voice strong as she addressed the crowd. "We built this monument not to celebrate victory," she said, "but to remember what we survived. Every person who was enslaved, every family that was torn apart, every human who died fighting for freedom. We remember them. We honor them. And we promise that no species will ever suffer this way again, not if humanity has the power to prevent it." She paused, looking at the mixed crowd. Humans and aliens stood together, some species that had fought against each other now living in peace. "The galaxy thought we were dangerous before they enslaved us," Murray continued. "They were afraid of our potential, our adaptability, our refusal to accept limits.